Mahabub, and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, the podcast where Matt and Todd see a movie and then we record a podcast from the parking lot in Matt's car right after the movie. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and welcome to this episode. Today we have an extra feature. I'll be giving a short review of Charlie's Angels, which I saw with my wife, not with Todd.
Oh.
Todd is not my wife.
Oh.
But we could still see it, and we would give a real review. But I'll say briefly, Charlie's Angels is a fun film, and plenty of girl power in it in the Spice Girls, Spice World movie tradition. It's fun. It's an action flick. It's not going to be an Oscar winner. There's a bit of talk about it in the press about feminism and so on. I would say you could just watch it and enjoy the movie and not worry too much about anything other than that. So there you have it. Charlie's Angels.
Nice. What did we see today, Matt?
Today, in this episode, what we'll mainly be discussing is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is a movie about a journalist who's given the assignment of interviewing Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, for an article that he's doing about heroes. And so through the movie, we get a lot of insight into the journalist's life and sort of his interaction and how his life becomes more woven with Mr. Rogers, and how that all plays out in the journalist's family life, and how him knowing Mr. Rogers is beneficial. So
Good job.
thanks. So what'd you think?
There are a ton of things to love about this movie, and I think on a whole I'm going to end with saying that I loved the movie. But one of the things right out the gate that took me by surprise is that, and I don't know why this was, I don't really feel like they really set this up for me to be surprised about, but the movie is more about Lloyd, what's his last name? Do you remember? Lloyd
Vulgar.
Yeah, Lloyd Vulgar, who is the journalist.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is kind of more about him and how his life is affected by meeting and talking to and kind of befriending Mr. Rogers. And I just thought that was like a really cool choice to do. Instead of it just being a straight up biopic, it's kind of this story about how this guy's life is altered by meeting this incredible person. And it's incredibly well acted. Obviously I think Tom Hanks is at a point in life where he's going to bring it every time that he's in a movie. The guy who plays Lloyd does a really good job of playing a guy who is emotionally closed off. Like, he doesn't deal with emotions. He doesn't understand them. He actively runs away from them. And you see in the movie him kind of just starting to deal with them and to understand them, and to understand that emotions are what makes us human and what makes us kind of tick, and that every emotion should be respected instead of just either feared or run away from. So the story is really great. I only have like a couple of little hiccups midway through the movie. I don't really feel like this is a spoiler, but there's like some dream sequence stuff which kind of came out of left field a little bit and kind of left me a little bit confused about where this is in the story, or is this a Hollywood taking liberties with the story? Did the guy who experienced all this really experience this? A little bit confusion as far as that. I think definitely nowadays, when it's based on a true story, there's a lot of liberties that are going to be taken with that story. But this was an interesting choice that, for a first review, I can't decide if I liked it or didn't like that aspect. So I'm sure maybe one day I'll land somewhere, but not right now, not with this instant review. So, yeah, I really love this movie. I thought if you want to see a movie that kind of helps you have some faith in humanity a little bit again with the day and age that we live in, and it's easy that everyone's at each other's throats and there's so many things to disagree on, it just is a nice film to watch and to experience, and to experience not only this guy's story, but a little bit of who Mr. Rogers was. And one thing that I want to highlight that I think they really tried to establish that I thought made this movie above just a regular biopic where you find out, oh, this guy's great, he lived such a great life, he did so much stuff, is that they really emphasized this movie of how much Fred Rogers worked on being a good person. Like, they go into stuff that he worked on for himself, they go into like stuff that he actively did on a daily basis to just bring out the best in himself. And I really enjoyed learning that aspect of who he was. So I'm landing on I love it. Matt, how about you?
Well, I liked the movie a lot. I thought, like you brought up at the end, I thought there was a couple points where it was just a little bit like, kind of what's going on. Like, I know Mr. Rogers had the make believe kingdom.
They call it the Kingdom of Make Believe and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, it was probably called something different, but anyway, so there was a little bit of that aspect maybe thrown in. Maybe that's what they were going for with some of the kind of dream sequency stuff, but it wasn't really pervasive in the movie. There was just a couple times where you're like, I'm what?
Sure.
It
absolutely.
seemed a little bit uneven.
Yeah.
With the rest of kind of how things were laid out in a more story driven way. But Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, you talk about nailing it. I mean,
Yeah.
he was Mr. Rogers,
Yeah.
and he had the mannerisms, he had the slow speech pattern, he had it all, and it really an amazing performance by him. Now maybe he's well, I did read an article that he's Fred Rogers' sixth cousin, so maybe that played into it as well. But no, just an amazing job of capturing kind of the Mr. Rogers vibe and persona. I think if you grew up on watching Mr. Rogers, it's not been on the air for a while, but you're going to love sort of the nostalgia side of things and taking you back to sort of watching an episode of Mr. Rogers. I mean, there's enough components in here that I think you get a full episode throughout the movie of just kind of what a Mr. Rogers episode was like, from the coming in and changing into a sweater with a zipper, which I made my mom make me sweaters with zippers when I was younger because of Mr. Rogers, because I wanted to be like him and have those sweaters.
Way to go, Holly.
Yeah, good job, Mom. Thanks. So anyway, I thought it was great. Aside from some unevenness, there's really not much to be upset about. It's really a touching film. It really brings a lot of emotions to the surface for sure, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
A little bit. The part of the movie I sort of felt like was therapy, where your therapist is Mr. Rogers, and I think that would be okay. If we all went to therapy with Mr. Rogers. So.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there's an aspect of the film where they were going for that. Like, there's a scene where they're in a restaurant and he's telling the guy to take a moment and think about all the people who love him, who loved him into the world, is what he says. And there's just an incredible shot in that scene where, the camera is panning in on Tom Hanks, Mr. Rogers, and it's noticeable that he's not looking at the guy anymore. He's looking at you in the theater. Like, his eyes are forward into the camera, like just looking at you. It is your moment to take while you're watching the movie. Like, it's like little importance to the story, big importance to you watching it in the theater. And
Yeah.
I thought that was just a really incredible moment. Like,
Yeah,
So-
I agree. They took a full minute of
Yeah,
silence in
right.
the movie with that kind of shot, and they are in a restaurant at the time, and even the restaurant kind of quiets down. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of what makes it sort of a meaningful thing is like all the background noise fades out, and
Sure.
you really get a good 60 seconds of meaningful silence. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like unlike most movies that we've seen so far for this podcast, this one is going to get a lot of awards. It is going to be a contender for some stuff.
Yep.
So, how many Daniel Tigers
Ooh,
would you
Daniel
give
Tiger.
this movie?
Daniel Striped Tiger. I'm going to give it 4.2 Daniel Striped Tigers.
Strong.
Thought it was a really solid movie and really enjoyable. So,
Yeah. I think this one's going to be my highest rated movie we've seen so far. Like, I think Parasite is at 4.5,
Okay.
if I remember correctly, and I think this movie is going to be like 4.6. Like, I think I'm definitely landing on 4.6. I got lost in the dream sequences, like we've said. It was an interesting choice. I don't know if it works for or against the movie at this point, but because I'm so unsure of it, I feel like it brings my rating down a little bit. But 4.6 Daniel Tigers or King Fridays. I guess they're interchangeable.
They could be. King Friday the 13th.
King Friday the 13th.
Yes.
So, yes. Before Matt does his closing, we have a little bit of talk shop to talk about. We will not record another podcast for probably over a week. Well, definitely over a week.
Yep.
Because someone's going on vacation.
That's right. Well, Thanksgiving break, programming note, we will be back with you doing more podcasts in the month of December.
Yes. So thanks we just hit 10 or 11, and we definitely just hit 100 listens. That email popped into my email. So
Yeah.
thanks for that.
And thanks to Todd's mom for always listening.
That is true. Yeah, she
Yes.
does always listen.
It's great. Thanks, Debbie. All right. Well, that does it for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies. I feel like this was one of the longer episodes, but we had a lot to say. So please check us out wherever you find podcasts, and we'll see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da-da.
da da da.